Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full Time, where we take you around the world of soccer locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. Full Time is presented by the Game Sports Podcast and powered by 91N. You're listening to Season 4, Episode 10 of Full Time. I'm your host, Daniel Scarpino, and with me is our co host, Gitano Gallo. Before we begin today's show, Full Time is sponsored by Little Caesars Pizza. With their two locations in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, you can download and access the Pizza Portal app so you can enjoy a delicious hot and ready pizza from Little Caesars today. We remind our listeners that recordings of Full Time occur weekly or bi weekly, and uploads to all of our platforms for public viewing and listening occur weekly or bi weekly as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you back to Full Time. We have yet another wonderful opportunity to talk about the beautiful game. G, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Scarps, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well for sure. I was a little bit upset that we couldn't go and play futsal last night like we typically do on Wednesdays, but beyond that, I'm doing very well. Thank you very much, sir. In today's show, we will discuss managerial departures in the world of football, how the January transfer window finished up, Europe's Big Five, and the FA Cup. As always, if anyone would like to listen to our previous content, please check us out at Full Time on the Game Sports Podcast and 91N. And without further ado, Gaetano, and to everyone who has taken the time to tune in here today, let's kick off. We get today's show rolling by talking about the carousel of managers happening in the world of football. Gitano, there's been so much news over the past 14 days or so regarding managers and coaches in the world of football. Let's get the conversation started as to why so many things in this aspect of football have occurred at one specific time. Why do you personally think that all of these announcements have come out at the same time, roughly?
I honestly have no idea. And they picked such a weird time too, like the middle of the January transfer window. So now, if a player might have been interested in signing for you, maybe he's like, oh, like, I don't know who the manager is going to be next summer. Like maybe I'm not going to sign. I think just the timing of the announcements has been weird. And the fact that they all came at the same time is just super, super weird.
Yeah, it seemed like it was one after another. Even like a few things with Steven Gerrard announcing that he was staying out in Saudi and hiring some new staff members. Like everything just seemed to happen at once, and I don't, in my memory, anyways, I don't remember a time it was ever like that when it was just managerial announcement after managerial announcement. But nevertheless, here we are. And the biggest of all of that managerial news is that Jurgen Klopp has made the public announcement that he will be leaving Liverpool Football Club at the end of this season, marking an end to his 9-year stint at the club. Gitano, regardless of our feelings towards Liverpool Football Club, we have to pay respect to them as one of the biggest clubs in England and one of the biggest in world football for all of that, for that matter. Klopp will leave the club as a legend, having transformed Liverpool Football Club, in his words, turning doubters into believers. Liverpool is still in the running for the Carabao Cup this season. They are top of the Premier League. They are still in the FA Cup, and they are still in the Europa League. Amongst Jurgen Klopp's biggest achievements whilst at Liverpool, he has won the Premier League, the Champions League, the FIFA Club World Cup, the UEFA Super Cup, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and the Community Shield. Gitano, the news took the world of football by storm, and it was a shock surprise to hear that Jurgen Klopp himself, having been the main figurehead at Liverpool for nearly the past decade, is basically on his way out the door of his own choosing, of course. First, G, just your thoughts on what he's accomplished so far during his time at the club.
You know, it's really weird to look at any managers from kind of the last 7, 8 years. And I don't mean to sound like a bit of a dick when I say this, but Pep's won so much that when you compare the number, there just hasn't been a lot of trophies for other managers in England to win.
Right.
But when you look outside of City, I think they've probably had the best return of trophies easily. Premier League, you just rhyme them all off, but they won basically everything they could have won in that time period. And the style in which they did it was those 17-18 to 19-20, those City Liverpool games were the bane of my existence. Those were the hardest 90 minutes of my life every season. Playing them in the Champions League was awful. They were just They were so good. They were so good. And like, I'm glad that he's leaving, because now I can look back on those times. He's like, man, like that was fun while it lasted. I don't have to deal with that anymore. Because there was something about him as a manager, as a person. He just got that Liverpool team playing so well, and it worked perfectly against City all the time. I think, yeah. I think when, in 10 years, 15 years, when you look back at Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, massive success. Absolutely.
Yeah, I fully agree with everything that you said, and I can only imagine you as a City fan, you would have some some very difficult afternoons. We'll put it that way. And yeah, I mean, he had a connection he still has a connection with the fans, and obviously the football that he's played. But sometimes people just have this certain, personality trait about them, and Klopp certainly has that. And I've always thought down the years, do I agree with everything that he says? No. Do I like a lot of what he says? Yes. Would I have ever taken him at my club? For sure, I would have, because I love his energy. I love the way he manages. He loves the sport, and he said to himself, I've poured everything that I've had into this, and therefore I need some time off. So, he might be getting back involved in football, but he's pretty adamant that he's going to take at least 1 year off. And probably the most important, Gaetano, it's all about what he's leaving behind. When someone like Klopp leaves a club such as Liverpool after having made such an indelible impact, to your point, it does take someone, and in many cases, many people, a lot of time to fill in those gaps. And I've seen it at Arsenal after Wenger left, and I could tell the tale because I've lived it myself. But what will Liverpool Football Club look like in the seasons to come now that Klopp won't be in the dugout, because that whole staff is leaving? There's people in the footballing departments that are leaving. It's going to look a lot different there.
Yeah, I don't think there is a kind of clear-cut replacement, and that's Xabi Alonso. I personally don't think he's going to end up there. I think he's got Real Madrid written all over him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird because the squad is kind of aging out too. So it's almost going to look like kind of similar to what Arsenal's been doing, where you were getting a new manager and you're shifting out kind of the old guard. Obviously, like guys like Van Dijk, Salah, Alisson, like they have years left in them. But is a new manager coming in going to kind of build them into their long-term plans, or is it just going to be, do we sign, a new winger, maybe 18, 19, to kind of transition out of Salah? Do you, replace certain guys like Van Dijk? Do you get another younger center back to eventually take his spot? I think it's going to look a little weird. I don't think they're not going to fall off the way United did when Fergie left, where it was, seventh, I think it was seventh or eighth the immediate season, and then kind of just middling there ever since. I don't think it'll be that bad. I just think their squad's just significantly better than United's was at that time. But yeah, I think it's gonna be weird. I don't know who's gonna come in. There are some high profile managers available, and we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, at the moment, I don't really have there's not like a guaranteed guy. Like Gerrard just signed his new extension in Saudi Arabia, so like I don't think he'll be there. It's going to be an interesting one.
It definitely is, and the complexion of Liverpool Football Club, it'll take some getting used to, similar to when Wenger left Arsenal. And I'm just speaking to that as an Arsenal fan. Just that first season, I just thought to myself, I don't know, it's just something doesn't feel right. And I actually liked Unai Emery. It didn't work out. We've talked about this 1,000 times before, but yeah, it's definitely going to be different at Liverpool Football Club. But I think what's different there, to your point, is that there's pieces. Even that young boy, Connor Bradley, I think.
Yes, the fullback, yes.
Yeah, like he's come in and hit the ground running. Like they've got some pieces there. I think Konate's going to be fantastic, obviously. So there's pieces there that they could work with whoever the next manager is. They definitely won't be left for dead. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be just so different to not see Klopp in the dugout, and it is what it is. It's football. It's life. Everyone has to move on at some point. But there is another manager in the world of football who will be leaving his post at the end of the season, and that one's out in Spain. It's Barcelona manager Xavi, stating that he too will leave his club at the end of the season. Gitano Xavi has managed to win La Liga and really get Barcelona back on track for the most part. But he expressed to the media that his departure comes on the back of the pure difficulty of managing a club such as Barcelona. Gee, let's unpack that a little bit and get to the root of what he means when he says that. The floor is yours.
I think it's kind of like there's kind of a couple prongs on this one. It's not just like one specific thing. I think first of all, just it's the fact that they are Barcelona, the expectation, globally from them is just so high. They are and have been kind of the face of world football, or one of the major ones, for as long as we've been alive. And so yeah, that comes with massive expectation. And when they've had good seasons under Xavi, but like the expectation is still kind of the Messi era of just domination, and that's just not the case anymore. So that's tough. Financially, Barcelona are in just one of the worst positions in any club in the world, which doesn't help when you're trying to maintain that level of success. Not being able to spend or having very limited spending power. They've had to rely on a lot of free transfers recently. Not being able to sign, like, to register players that they've signed. So that obviously is not a great situation to be working in if you're wanting to bring in players to be competitive and you can't. And then I think just his personal connection to the club as well. Like, he is a legend, an icon there, one of their greatest ever players. And it's almost, it's the same way I look at like Vincent Kompany. I wouldn't mind if he managed City, but if it's not as good as his playing career, it's just almost like tainted a little bit.
Right.
And so like it's just one of those things where I think it's he's done a good job. We've talked about, he's kind of righted the ship, turned them around, got them back to being somewhat competitive. Competitive in Spain, somewhat competitive in Europe. I think it's just better to kind of take this kind of small victory. He did his job well, and then kind of leave on his own terms rather than kind of sticking around for it to. Not that it'll inevitably go wrong, but the way the Barcelona board works, like, more than likely he would have ended up getting sacked probably next season anyways. So I think it's just kind of better for everyone in this case.
Yeah, and I can't exactly recall which manager it was, if it was Fergie or Klopp or whoever had said it. It's better to leave 1 year earlier than 1 year too late.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things too, is Xavi, that you see what's on the surface, you see what's presented to you in the public or on social media or whatever. But behind the scenes, God knows what's happening. And you alluded to so many great points there with financial stuff and bringing players in and these types of things. But to manage a club such as that, it's got to be so difficult. So I do understand the departure. And with his departure, Gitano, at the end of this season, it remains to be seen what's going to happen with Barcelona. But what do you think for Xavi's future in management? What do you think that's going to look like for him?
Club-wise, I'm not 100% sure yet. I'd probably closer to the end of the season when, there's kind of more openings. But I think he's done a really good job of like putting himself in the window of, I'm going to be a good manager. He's tactically sound, financially decently responsible. He couldn't really spend a ton at Barcelona and did manage to bring in some good players. So I definitely think he put his best foot forward in that case. I don't think many, like, outside of like the top clubs, and that's mostly because most of them have managers at this point. I don't think anyone could really go wrong with hiring him at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And for me personally, I could see him kind of wanting to hang around Spain. I think that's kind of maybe obviously his bread and butter. It's what he's most comfortable with. But I mean, he's still a young manager, so who knows where he might venture out to in the future. And I think I always say sky's the limit, because I mean he's proven himself to be a good manager, as you just said. But I think that he has a lot of room to really showcase his talents as the years go on. And I think that he does have a promising managerial career ahead. It is two other managers who have gone up and down the world of football and certainly have made themselves good managers over many, many years. And that's because obviously the titles that they've won, the accolades that they hold, the football that they play, and the impact that they've had. And of course, we're talking about Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho. They're often put in the same roundtable discussions for their managerial excellence. Both men are currently not in a managerial position, but they are tipped to some big jobs in the world of football. Gitano, the ultimate question is, which clubs will these men end up at, and why?
So I'm gonna start with Mourinho, because I got there's two that like come to mind immediately. The first one, Chelsea. I think Poch is gone in the summer, and I think that is it what? It'll be his third time at Chelsea.
Number 3.
It just, there's just something in. I'm just picking up a vibe. I think it'd be hilarious because it's going to end the exact same way as the previous 2 times did. But just for the pure box office, I absolutely would love to see that. The other thing I kind of heard him linked with is not actually a club, but the Portuguese national team. I don't hate it. I've never seen him manage at international level. I don't think he ever has that I can think of.
Me neither.
Um, but yeah, I think that would be interesting. They've got a pretty decent crop of players. Some veterans, some young kids. So I think it would be interesting with European Championships and World Cups coming up soon.
Definitely. And in the case of Conte, do you have any ideas or any sort of inclination as to where you think that he might go?
I think he'll stay in Italy. I don't see him like leaving there. But I think that's also going to kind of be one of those things that at the end of the season, as managers kind of either leave or get sacked, what jobs are available. But yeah, he's got Serie A written all over him.
Yeah, and I've seen some reports about possibly AC Milan. I don't know how true that is. I mean, he's been around Italy, that's for sure. And I
Yeah.
also think that Conte will stay there. In the case of Mourinho, I don't know where he's going to go, but I do want him to go back to Chelsea almost just for the storyline. Like, I mean, it'll suck because Arsenal will never beat them. It definitely would make for some
You'll just have to wait till the third season, then it'll be fine.
then it'll be a-okay. It's interesting because, it's like you look at it and yes, you could make an argument that he has unfinished business at Chelsea, but how do you have unfinished business when you've already been there twice? And I think he's won 3 Premier Leagues whilst he was there.
Yep. Won just about everything while he was there, outside of like a Champions League, I think.
Yeah, and maybe that's the unfinished business. But at the end of the day, too, I don't know what's happening with the financial fair play stuff. We're going to talk about that in the transfer window discussions here in a minute. But I don't know if Chelsea's going to be in any trouble moving forward because they spent a ridiculous amount of money. So, Mourinho's a very intelligent human being, and I'm thinking that he's going to make a wise choice. But who knows? There could be something off the grid that, like a national team or something like this, that we might not expect. But we will definitely keep a close eye on that. From management to players, it's time to discuss the January transfer window. More specifically, we will discuss how the January transfer window finished up. Gitano, before we get into the bigger deals that have come across the world of football, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this window because, as we are going to discuss, this transfer window was very unlike the windows that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I don't want to say like shocked, but definitely surprised at how little was spent. And little is a relative term. It's still probably in the hundreds of millions. I assume you've got the final tally there. But like you said, compared to the previous couple windows we've seen, definitely a quieter, more strategic window than just the typical splashing of cash.
Definitely. And to some of those points that you just mentioned, it was a cautious approach that was taken by clubs in the world of football this January transfer window. So very different as to what we're used to. Is this a trend, G, that you foresee happening moving forward, or are clubs going to eventually, like you said, splash the cash like we've been accustomed to seeing over the past years?
I think just with FFP right now, and just there's a couple of the major spenders kind of in hot water that can't spend. So I think maybe the next couple will be a little more tame, but like once they kind of because it works in like 3-year periods. So kind of once they kind of free themselves up from the current kind of period, then I expect to see some money flying around again.
Yeah, I think so too. It probably is only a matter of time, but for this moment in time, I think most clubs are just kind of taking a knee on it, if you will. So what we're going to do now here, folks, is we are going to highlight some of the transfers for you. And this is going to be the final time that we do it, as the transfer window has concluded. The following transfer information comes from The Guardian. First, it's Sacha Boey, who goes from Galatasaray to Bayern Munich for $25.6 million. The attacking right back signs the deal until June 2028 after Bayern and their proposed interest in Kieran Trippier. Gee, maybe a bit of a second choice for Bayern, but did they land a good one here?
I really like this move. Not that Trippier would have been a bad move for them, but I think bringing someone younger probably costs a little less than Trippier would have. I think just kind of works out better for them. It looks like he's a good young player. And then for Galatasaray as well, turning a nice profit on him after only a couple years. I think it's just kind of great business all around.
Yeah, and I think that type of profile really suits the likes of Munich really well, and I think that he's gonna come good, especially that contract being signed for, about 4 years there. I think this is going to be a good one for them. Next, we see Renan Lodi, who goes from Marseille to Al Hilal for 19.8 million. Marseille accept the big money offer for former Nottingham Forest and Atletico Madrid defender, who was first choice, left back this past season. Gitano, it's a move out to Saudi Arabia for Lodi. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think this was probably his final kind of big contract in like not European football, but just in football in general. So I can't really argue with him for wanting to go and kind of get that money out there. Marseille get a good chunk of money back for him. I think it's kind of everyone's happy here.
Yeah, it seems to be a win-win, and I'm on the same page as you there. Arthur Vermeeren leaves Royal Antwerp for Atletico Madrid for 18.8 million. Atletico swoop in to sign the teenager who is on many Premier League clubs' radars, paying a $22 million fee with a $5 million fee in add-ons. Gitano, what does this signing mean, and what do you think that this is going to do for Atletico?
Not actually a big fan of this signing. They just don't play a very attacking style of football, and it just kind of stifles those like young creative players. We've seen it with João Felix. Obviously, the money is totally different in these two cases. Definitely less of a gamble with this one. But yeah, I just think if you're kind of a young attacking player, Atletico Madrid is not the kind of place to play. But I'd happily be proven wrong here, and he like kind of turns out good. But yeah, initially not a big fan.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that because it's that old phrase, right? Horses for courses. And if you're that type of player, you probably want to go to a place that has maybe a more exciting brand of football. But who's to know? I mean, in the world of football, things can get pretty funny, and then maybe Atletico Madrid all of a sudden get a new manager, change their style. I don't personally foresee it, but anything can happen. So we'll see what happens there. But he definitely has a bright future ahead of him, being so young. Next, it's Adam Wharton, who goes from Blackburn Rovers to Crystal Palace for 18.5 million. Palace finally land their man for a fee that could rise to 22 million. To play for such a big club like Crystal Palace is a great honor, says Wharton. Gitano, Palace get a piece to bolster their lineup after what seems like forever. Your analysis here.
Yeah, we kind of gave them some stick over the summer for not really doing a lot of business. So I like this one for them. I love it for Blackburn as well, getting a lot of money for a team not in the Premier League. That's going to be super useful for them for their push for promotion. So yeah, I think this is just kind of win-win for everyone here.
Yeah, I think win-win's the right way to put it. And we just talked about it too, about the second to last signing with Renan Lodi. So yeah, I think that this bodes well for Wharton, for Blackburn, for Crystal Palace. I think it's good all the way around. And Gabriel Mascardo goes from Corinthians to PSG for 17.1 million. PSG sealed a move for the defensive midfielder who has signed a 4.5-year deal. Gitano, what do you make of this signing?
I think this is an interesting one. He's really only been involved in the first team for Corinthians for about 6 months. So not a lot on file for him in terms of minutes played at a high level. But definitely a high ceiling for him. Not a terrible fee that PSG's paid for him. So a lot of potential for this to be a very good transfer.
Yeah, and I think it was you who said, I mean, this is months ago now, PSG's always been missing that sort of player, that holding midfield type player and these sorts of things. I just got to be honest, I don't know if it's going to be him. I think that they probably would have been better off going for somebody who had a little bit more experience, maybe somebody who was a little bit more proven. I like, to your point earlier about Vermeeren, I hope to be proved wrong on this one, but I actually think that they probably could have got something a little bit more stable in there, but who knows, maybe he will come good, but it's definitely a position that was probably needed with PSG. And Gitano, we did not cover every single transfer, of course, that has taken place here in the window, especially as of late. But did we leave any out that have caught your attention personally?
So there's a couple I'm looking at here. I like Bournemouth picking up Enes Unal out of Getafe. He's scored a pretty decent rate in Spain. I think that might be a big signing for them. And then the other one I know you've mentioned, I'm pretty sure you want to talk about, is Benrahma out of West Ham to, where is he? To Lyon. I think they've had a actually kind of decent window. And that's it could be a really big ad for them.
I think so. And yeah, that was the one that I was going to bring up, Benrahma. I mean, he's one of them players at West Ham who, if he wasn't starting, he's come off the bench. He's just that impact guy. So, I mean, West Ham, they've obviously done some decent business this window, but I think that that's actually one that kind of caught my attention and was a little bit out of the blue. But sometimes if you're going to have an incoming, you have to have an outgoing, don't you? So,
exactly.
Yeah. And this transfer window was, as we talked about time and time again, it wasn't the typical window for what we're accustomed to seeing, especially at our age. And, being sort of in that 30-year-old bracket where we've basically just seen exciting windows down the past probably 10 years, give or take, even more maybe. That being said, what would you rate this transfer window out of 10, my friend?
So as like analytically, probably like a 7 or 8. I thought teams were smart with their business. As a fan of the chaos, it was like a 3 or a 4. Like there was just no big moves. There was no like deadline day, like is it going to happen moves. But yeah, I think as a fan, 3 or 4. Analytically, probably a 6 or 7.
Right, and I've only gone for it. Well, I mean, I guess you can call it a hybrid, but I've given it a bang average 5.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit politically correct to say that, but like you said, analytically, it makes a lot of sense as to why teams have done this. But there was nothing that completely got us out of our seats. But I do appreciate the cautious and more methodical approach. It gave it, I'm not going to call it a more fun because it wasn't fun, but it gave it a newer layer of complexity for us to look at, which I did enjoy. And you said it a couple of shows ago that it's nice to see that not everyone's just being reckless and actually having to think about the signings that they make. So I'll give it a bang average 5. And with it being a bit of an interesting window here, G, would you say, or who would you say, I should rather say, who would you say won this transfer window with the business that they did?
So I'm actually going to go to Germany and say that Borussia Dortmund had probably the best. Why did you have them too?
They got 2 winners, and they're one of them.
Just the fact. So they brought in Jadon Sancho and Ian Maatsen both on loan.
Yep.
We've talked about. I think it was. I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before. With Sancho going back to Dortmund, you get 90 million pounds for him, and 18 months later you get him back on loan. He's hit the ground running there, been phenomenal, almost like he never left.
Right.
So that's awesome. And then Ian Maatsen's been pretty good for them as well. And kind of with the loan moves, if it doesn't turn out great, they don't really have that like long-term impact on the club. So yeah, I definitely have them as my winners.
Definitely, and they're one of my winners, and kind of on par with them. I also put PSG, and the reason for that is because I think that, like you said, both of them have brought in some key pieces, and they've added some players to very important areas that they probably needed. And I think that bodes well for them moving forward. And both are still involved in various competitions, so I think it's a good thing for both of them. And G, we will have to talk about the losers of this transfer window, who this window missed out on some of their business that they would have liked to have gotten done.
I don't want to do this to you, but I think Arsenal needed more goals. They needed something. I don't think the 100 million that they were being quoted for Ivan Toney was realistic, and I don't think he's particularly the solution to that problem anyways. But Gabriel Jesus just hasn't really been on form this season. You don't want to rely on Eddie Nketiah. He just hasn't proven himself at this level yet. I think they just needed more goals and they didn't get them. But like, it's tough to call them losers because they also didn't like spend recklessly just to get goals for the sake of it. You know what I mean? Like they didn't just go and spend 100 million on Toney just to be like, hey, we brought in a striker. Like, so it's hard to call them losers, but I think they ultimately didn't get what they needed to kind of continue this push and like take the push to the next level.
Yeah, and I also have to take a humble approach because I'm going to put Arsenal as one of my losers. And to your point about Jesus, sometimes it's not even about his production; it's about just keeping him fit because he's sometimes not available. And what is that quote? The best ability is availability.
Yep.
If goals are going to come, sometimes you're thinking in a game, they're going to have to come from midfield. Great performance against Liverpool the other day, though, I have to say that. But they did need, by the looks of it, a striker, Arsenal did, and probably another piece to help with kind of the injury crisis at holding midfield because Thomas Partey cannot get fit. Regardless, we're going to see what happens. I do hope, obviously, the best for Arsenal, but they probably did need another piece to score, another 10, 15 goals. And next, I'm actually going to go, and I think some people are going to disagree with me here, but I'm going to say Liverpool. And I say that purely just because of the Klopp announcement and not actually bringing anybody in. And then if you take a look at, maybe some of the departures, that are imminent in the future, maybe the likes of Salah and others, there's whispers that they might leave sooner rather than later, like not this season, obviously, but those are going to be my two, Arsenal and Liverpool. And I'm also going to go kind of off the grid for this one. And it only kind of dawned on me the other day. There was a ton of movement out in Saudi Arabia in the summer and then last window as well. And this one, we basically heard about nothing apart from like a couple. So I feel like that needs to be mentioned as well. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, they also had some departures as well. So Jordan Henderson's gone.
Yeah.
There were rumors that Benzema was leaving. Obviously, it didn't happen, but this is something I was discussing with a friend the other day. This feels very much like the Chinese Super League back in like 2013, 2015, where they come in guns blazing, 50 million here, 60 million there, 70 million there. We're gonna change the landscape of football. We're gonna be the next superpower, and then it just kind of dissolves.
Yeah.
And for the sake of football, I don't want it to. I think the more elite leagues there are around the world, the better for everyone. But yeah, it's just starting to kind of feel a bit like the Chinese Super League.
Yeah, and you know what? It was something that we didn't mention in the transfers too. Jesse Lingard, I think, just signed in Japan. Did he?
Did he actually?
I think I might have to be fact checked on that one. I could have sworn I saw something this morning. I was at the gym. I was doing a bit of cardio, and I was looking on my phone. I could have sworn I come across an article that said Jesse Lingard to Japan. Didn't actually there, but saw a headline.
So I'm looking on FootMob, and they don't have him. They still have him listed as a free agent. So, but the thing is, you can sign free agents outside of the window. So he might still be in negotiations or like be trying to. But yeah, as of recording at 7:53 p.m. on February 8th, he is still a free agent.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to see in the next episode of Full Time if we can update our listeners, because, like I said, I saw an article headline. Now, it could have been fake news for sure, but so I don't know if it was to China or to Japan, but it was somewhere for sure. And yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that one. And Gitano, sometimes we do have clubs who quietly do good business without being too loud about it. Who this window quietly did good business for you?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I think City moving on Calvin Phillips was quietly really good business. Like we've talked about a couple times, it just never worked out. He's out at West Ham now on loan. They recouped a little bit of fee for him. It's not a permanent thing, but I just think, for his sake, he didn't need to be just rotting on City's bench. He can be playing some football. City didn't really need to bring in a replacement. There was no panic buying. With guys like Kovacic and Mateus Nunez kind of still available, and obviously Rodri. So I thought that was it's like kind of, they had a quiet window. They didn't do any bad business. I like that. And then really, not that Bayern Munich's window was quiet. They did have a couple of big signings, but they just kind of, it wasn't like long stretches of like, aren't they going to sign them, other than the Trippier kind of saga. So I just really liked all their business. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, those are two really good shouts, and I agree with those. And I hate to say it, but like on Full Time, we always have to be honest. I'm first going to give it to Tottenham, if you could believe that. And I was actually saying in our preview show of the transfer window who was going to miss out on their targets, and I thought it would be them, but they quietly snuck in some signings, which is going to help their injury-riddled lineup. So Spurs are going to get a rare positive shout from me. Probably the only time that's ever going to happen on our show. And second, I'm actually going to say Brentford because at this moment in time, they are in a bit of a relegation scrap. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And even though we probably both believe that they won't get relegated, they held on to Ivan Toney. And I thought that was when Thomas Frank came out with that quote, Toney will not be leaving. I said, yeah, okay, Arsenal aren't going to get him, and that no one's getting him. So they were also able to sign two key players in the window to help the youthfulness of the squad. So I actually think that Brentford are one of the quiet winners in this one as well. And with that does bring us to the end of the transfer window for January 2024. The total amount spent this window in the world of soccer was in the ballpark of 800 million. As per reports via The Athletic and The Guardian, it states that it was around that 800 million mark. Comparing that to last season, where by the time the add-ons and everything else were accumulated, accounted for, and tabulated, there was over 1.6 billion spent. So a much more cautious and careful approach to transfer window where the spending was cut by more than half. Gee, another transfer window comes and goes. Overall, were you happy with what you saw in the transfer market, given that there wasn't a reckless nature to the spending this time around?
I would say overall, yeah, I wish there would have been kind of one kind of marquee signing for this window, because I can think back to a bunch of windows where there's always there's the Alexis Sanchez to United window. You can just kind of there's names and certain transfers that stick to windows. There just really wasn't one for this transfer window. But other than that, I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, and you know what? The one that always sticks in my mind, again, biased, but I like that Arsene Wenger interview. Are you going to be signing anybody? Yeah, well, we might have an announcement tomorrow. Then Ozil comes through the door. Never forget that one.
Yep.
As always, though, it was a pleasure, regardless of this being a very different window. It was a pleasure to cover the January transfer window here on Full Time. And whilst we don't want to wish time away here, and we don't do that at Full Time, we definitely look forward to the next transfer window come the summer. This is Daniel Scarpino and Gitano Gallo, and you're listening to Full Time on the Game Sports Podcast. A reminder that Full Time is sponsored by Little Caesars Pizza. You can download and access the Pizza Portal app for any of the 2 locations in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Have a delicious hot and ready pizza from Little Caesars today. Let's jump on over to Europe's Big Five, and we will get the conversation started with the English Premier League. Liverpool sit atop of the division with 51 points. Behind them is Manchester City with 49 points, but Man City have a game in hand, which if they make good on, they could go top of the league. Arsenal is in third with 49 points of their own. Aston Villa round out the top 4 with 46 points. Such a fresh thing to say all the time that we've got a new team in that top 4 mix. Spurs are looking up in 5th position with 44 points. Gitano, can we officially say that the title race is good and well on?
Oh, we are in for a title race here. And I hate to be that City guy, but it's in our hands now.
Right.
And it's very few times under Pep has it been in our hands and we've not won it. Actually, I think the times would be 0. So yeah, I'm confident. We got a good we got the squad's pretty much, I think, at this point healthy, other than a couple little niggling injuries. So yeah, I think a fully healthy City, almost fully healthy Arsenal, and almost fully healthy Liverpool, and this Villa side going toe to toe for the Premier League title. I think we are in for a phenomenal title race.
Yeah, and I know this might be a bit of a cop-out answer because, I mean, everybody says it every season, and it's absolutely true. You got to keep your best players fit. You got to keep your squad healthy. But I do think just for how tight it is right now with, 15 games left to go, give or take, I honestly think whichever team can keep their squad the healthiest probably has the best. I'm not to say that they're going to win it, but they have the best chance to win it. I know, again, it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but Arsenal have got a few pieces missing. But if they can get those guys back, they have a better chance to challenge. Liverpool, if somebody ends up, picking up an injury or like the Salah thing right now, who knows how fit he is, could they end up dipping? If City keep all their guys fit, are they going to rise? There's lots of things to be said about that, in my opinion, right now. But what we could say with the top 5 right now, we have to include Spurs in there. Do you think that these
though?
Well, I mean, you know what? Knowing me, man, I'll say no, and then it'll come back to bite me, and then I'll drop into 5th or something. I have to keep them in there. But those 5 teams, by the end of the season, do you think that they're all still going to be there, but maybe just in a different order?
Yeah, I think the top 5 teams will be those 5 teams, not in that order. I just don't think United have enough to challenge in there. Brighton's been a little disappointing for me. Newcastle haven't been quite there. West Ham, I don't think have enough to get in there. So yeah, I think barring some sort of miracle 15-game run by one of those teams, yeah, I think that top 5 is pretty much sealed.
Yeah, here, February the 8th, I'm just going to go out and I'm just going to say it. Those top 5 teams are going to be the top 5, but like you said, in a different order. And what that order is, I couldn't tell you right now, even if I had any sort of inclination. I have no idea. I'm really not that smart. But I think I will say it right now, that top 5 is going to stay that top 5. And taking a brief look at the relegation battle, there has been a change after many, many weeks. Sheffield do remain bottom with just 10 points. Burnley is just 3 points better than them in 19th place. But it is now Everton who have slipped into the bottom 3 with 19 points of their own. Luton Town is just barely out of the relegation zone with 20 points, but they have gotten out of there for what seems to be the first time this season. Nottingham Forest is 16th with 21 points. It's Brentford in 15th with 22 points. Gitano, I think it's probably reasonable to say that Sheffield United and Burnley are destined for relegation to the championship. But that final spot in the relegation zone is kind of up for grabs. And understandably, none of the aforementioned teams want to be in there. But what could you say for the bottom of the table right now, G? Because, a few other teams have been pulled into this conversation.
Yeah, I really thought Everton kind of had turned their season around, even with the points deductions. Were kind of climbing out of danger nicely, but they've kind of slipped back in. There's enough in that squad that they should be able to get out of this. It might not be pretty how they get there, but like they should have enough to get out. Forest are kind of like, I'm on the fence with them because sometimes I watch them like, oh, like I get it, they're brilliant, and they just kind of don't get the results. And then sometimes they are just like worse than some of the teams we play against in our men's leagues. Like there's kind of no middle ground with them. And unfortunately for them, they're kind of on a bit of a bad slide right now. But I still can't see Luton staying up. As much as I would love it for the story and like it'd be great for them, I still don't see it.
Yeah, and I mean, we both predicted it at the beginning of the season with our relegation picks that we both thought they were going straight back down. I would love for them to stay, do some stadium renovations, and really be there or there just about. I still don't see it happening, but again, the world of football is so interesting, so funny. To your point about Nottingham Forest, Arsenal played them a couple weeks back, and that was an absolute scare, like a 2-1 game. Yeah. And I mean, Arsenal had like 81% possession of the ball, but Forest were solid. Like we had a very difficult time breaking them down. So sometimes their football is really good, even though it's like defensive and these types of things. But when they beat United, they caught them out on a couple of counters, like they were really solid. So Forest, I don't know. It's gonna be tough to say. I think that there'll be probably a bit of trading off in that 19th spot, but Burnley and Sheffield, just like I said, the top 5 wouldn't change in my opinion. I think both of those are going down. You think so too?
Yeah, I just, like I said about those kind of the outside of the top 5 teams, unless there's a miracle run from either like Sheffield, Burnley, or Luton, I think they're destined to go back down.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the way it is in football. But in the case of Burnley, at least, I think that they'll probably shoot right back up. So
yeah, or even if they don't come right back up, like they'll do the right business that will get them up properly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So keep a close eye on the relegation battle, especially with that kind of sort of 18th, final spot. In Italy, Serie A, Inter have shot right back up to the top of the division, having won 4 out of their last 5. They currently have 57 points. In second is Juventus with 53 points, and they are winless in their last 2 games. Milan are solid in third with 49 points. And it's Atalanta, Roma, and Bologna all currently vying for the 4th and final Champions League position. Gitano, Inter are really strutting their stuff in Italy at this moment in time. What can be said for Italy's top flight right now, G?
Yeah, Inter are looking really, really, really good. They always have. Like they've always been like a solid team. I think they really just kind of needed this run. Beating Juve, pulling up the score here. Yeah, like there's 1-0. That's a huge, huge result. Put a lot of space between them now. I think we've talked about it. I think it was last episode. Like I think that title race is down to 3 now. It's Inter, Juve, and AC Milan. That should be a really great title race. I also just like the race for the other European spots in Serie A. Some really fun teams in there. I have no idea what's going to happen. Like we talk about the Premier League being like, oh, like anyone can win it. Like I look at that kind of 4 through 8 in Serie A, and it feels, I get the same vibe from that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and we talked about it actually last season with the Bundesliga, how you kind of had like half of the table competing.
Yeah.
In places it's not the exact same, but kind of close, like with Italy. So it's awesome to see. And a lot of times you see these sort of runaways in the world of football, the likes of Bayern, PSG, these types of teams. It's nice to see that there's this sort of competitive nature across world football this year for the most part. So it's a welcome change for sure. In La Liga, Spain is heating up after 23 matches played. Real Madrid currently sit top with 58 points. Girona is second with 56 points. Barcelona is third with 50 points. And Atletico Madrid round out the top 4 with 48 points of their own. The top of the table changes once again, and it's Real Madrid and Girona with one single game, within one single game of each other. Please give us your analysis with 15 games left to go in this season for La Liga.
So they play each other next, by the way, if you didn't know that. That's this. I think it's this weekend. I'm not sure if they've got a week off or what the thing, but their next game is against each other, and I think you're potentially looking at a title deciding game. I'm super excited for it. I really hope Girona pull it off. Like, it's nice. Like when Leicester won the title in 15-16 it was.
Yes.
Like, not at the time I wasn't overly happy with it because City had a pretty poor season, and like you don't want to see other teams win your domestic league. But as a neutral, like watching from afar, I get it. I fully understand the Leicester hype. I hope that Girona pulled this off. I think they're going to. There's just something in the water. I really like it. And I think, I don't think Barcelona or Atletico are going to come close at this point. I think it's down to those two. And it's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe by some divine miracle, Bellingham and Vinicius Jr. will have a nightmare game and just play bad for once or something, and maybe they'll pull it off, So I hope it happens, man. I really do. I think it would just be the coolest thing. I really do. The Bundesliga in Germany continues to entertain. Leverkusen remain unbeaten with 52 points. Bayern sits second with 50 points. Stuttgart is third with 40 points. Dortmund are climbing and currently have fourth position with 37 points, 1 point more than fifth place RB Leipzig. G, has this officially become a two-horse race in Germany's top flight?
It is officially a two-horse race, and guess who plays this weekend?
Unbelievable, isn't it?
As you couldn't script it like this. It's just phenomenal. Yeah, Bayern and Leverkusen. How does that work out?
Football, man. Absolutely nothing like it.
Yeah. So I think again we're looking at potentially a title deciding game. Two on the same weekend is just incredible. And we haven't even got to Liga yet. But I think it's at this point a two-horse race. I don't think, like we talked about Dortmund doing good business. I don't think their business was good enough to challenge for the title, but it should be good enough to at least push, in their domestic cup and stay in a Champions League spot. And the rest of kind of the European teams, or the European places, like Leipzig's kind of got their shit together. They're kind of looking back to form. So I think it's a two-horse race. And do I think Leverkusen are going to go undefeated still? No, I think there's a loss somewhere in there, whether it's this weekend to Bayern or not. But I still think they're going to hold on to win the title.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really not too bold of a shout. I mean, they've played fantastic all season, and I'd love to see somebody new win the Bundesliga. So, I'm all in for that. I think that the race in Germany is going to be unreal. You couldn't have scripted it any better. And all I know is that Sunday night, as I'm, the Super Bowl is going to be on, I'm going to click my phone looking at soccer because, this weekend's going to be absolutely wild. So, Taylor Swift and all that, I couldn't be bothered, to be honest.
Not a Swiftie, no?
Well, you know what? Some of the tunes, they got me going, but I mean, nothing gets me going like a little bit of a title race in footy, you know what I mean? But speaking of the Super Bowl, I think the halftime show, Usher, and then apparently there's two guest stars coming. I know it's not in our programming here on this show, but I feel like we should probably mention it for everyone because,
it's one of those things, like the Super Bowl just kind of transcends everything for some reason. So, I mean, it was inevitable that it would kind of seep its way into this.
Yes, exactly. And all we can hope for is that, if somebody hit the Sioux celebration, maybe after something, we'll take that. I know the guys at 91M, they're going to end up watching this episode. They're going to think, what the hell are they doing? What's wrong with
them? This is why we don't get asked to feature on any of the football podcasts. We just have our own little corner here.
Anybody available to record us? Not Daniel and Gitano.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we leave it unread.
Exactly. Finally, France's Ligue 1 stays more or less the same. PSG are top with 47 points. 8 points behind them is Nice in second. Brest third with 36 points. Lille, Monaco, and Lens continue to push for European places. Gitano, not too much to be said from our last conversation for France's top flight, but is there anything out of the ordinary that we see here?
Not particularly. Even looking lower in the table, not just the European spots, looks pretty much as you'd expect, outside of Lyon having just an awful year. Hopefully their business that we talked about a little earlier will kind of give them a boost. They don't have a chance at any sort of European football, but on the off chance that it happens, it would be an absolute shame to see them get relegated.
Oh, I think so too. And they're a big club in France, and I don't want to see that. And I think, like you said, the business that they've done that should do well enough to keep them up. But nothing too out of the ordinary that we're seeing there in France. The FA Cup is raring to go in the fifth round of the competition, consisting of the final 16 teams. The teams who have qualified for the fifth round of the FA Cup and who will attempt to earn their way into a quarter-final spot are the following: Coventry, Maidstone United, Bournemouth, Leicester City, Blackburn Rovers, Newcastle, Luton Town, Manchester City, Nottingham Forest, Manchester United, Chelsea, Leeds United, Wolves, Brighton, Liverpool, and Southampton. G, the magic of the cup continues. How did you enjoy the fourth round of games that just passed us by not too long ago?
City scored and won at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I'm happy. We could lose every game for the rest of the season. We got that. We got that one out of the closet. We're good. I'm so happy.
Yeah, no, I could imagine that you are, and we've definitely got a lot to look forward to, not just with City, but to the entire fifth round of the FA Cup with these last 16 teams to look forward to, really. And what we're going to do here, G, is we're going to go through each matchup and select our winners right here, right now on full time. One of the funnest things that we always get to do on our show. So first, we've got Coventry and Maidstone. This is the matchup 100%. I'm looking forward to the most. I know you're looking forward to the City game the most, but this is probably like
Yeah,
being
outside of the City game. Yeah.
yeah. For me,
So
this
here's
is
I'm going to spoil this. I'm taking Maidstone all the way until they play City.
okay.
So like, yeah, if they go in a miracle run and like up to the final where they play City, I'm taking them every time,
Fair
just
enough.
for fun.
And you know what? I'm going Maidstone as well. I think that this is just sensational. A semi-professional club. Just for context, just so everyone understands that. I know we said it last show. A semi-professional club is competing against 15 other professional teams in a competition that is the oldest in British football and the most historic cup in England. Like, I don't think that people understand how big that is. Like, you're more of a hockey guy than me, even though I played rep hockey in the whole bit growing up. Can you give like an NHL example for some of the folks that might not understand?
This would be like an like not even an ECHL team. Like I don't even know what's lower than the ECHL. Like there really isn't a lot, but that would be like them playing in like the playoffs. And
Yeah, there you go.
It's just like, and like not just like there for like for fun, like oh like let's just throw this like the Wheeling Nailers. They're the only ECHL team I know. Like it's not like oh let's just throw the Wheeling Nailers in the playoffs for fun. Like
Right.
they've beaten like other professional teams to get here. Like it's insane.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I love their last game. Just and when you say the magic of the cup, like it really encapsulated that.
This is it. This is it.
Yeah, and I love when we were texting back and forth, like, oh my God, it happened. They did do it. Unreal. So yeah, I hope that it continues. But we're both going to take Maidstone for that first game, which is awesome. And next we've got Bournemouth and Leicester. G, who you got?
I'm going to take Bournemouth. I don't really know why, just off a vibe. I think they had an okay transfer window. I talked about bringing in Enes Unal a little earlier. I think they just, have a little bit more.
Fair enough. And they do have a little bit more, but I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go Leicester, having a pretty decent season in the championship. And I think that they could kind of ride that high going into this competition. They'll field their absolute best team that's available to them. So I'll take Leicester on that one. It'll be Newcastle making a trip to Blackburn. Gitano, who wins this contest?
It's kind of boring, but I'm going to go with Newcastle. I just think they're going to have a little too much for Blackburn, especially since Blackburn sold. Oh my God, I don't remember the player's name. We talked about it earlier.
Oh, Orton.
Yes. Yeah. Coming off that, they didn't really, in like, we talked about how they were going to use that money. Like it'd probably be a more long-term thing. They didn't do anything short-term. So yeah, I think Newcastle's got this one.
Yeah, and I'm with you, G. I'm also going to take Newcastle, so we agree there. Just have a little bit too much. And Newcastle have been having kind of, I wouldn't say they were having a bad season by any accounts, but in comparison to last season, certainly not as good. Got bounced from the Champions League, Premier League not going maybe to plan, but I think this might be the competition that they try and really target.
Yeah, I think the expectations were really high for this season coming in, and like unrealistically high for them.
Yeah.
So I don't, like you said, like not a bad season, because I think the bar was just set way too high.
You're right, and money can't buy everything. Like it takes time.
Immediately it can't. In time. Give it time.
Yes. Luton Town will play host to your Manchester City. Gee, it needs no asking, but take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to take City. We've been to Kenilworth Road. It's a nightmare to go there. Like it is not a fun ground to play at. But City still should just have enough to get through this.
Yep, I think so too. I'm looking at probably a 2 or 3-0 type of game for City. Arsenal had a very difficult game there earlier this year, had to win it on the last, not kick of the game, header of the game from Declan Rice. So, yeah, tough place to go to, but I'm also taking Man City. Nottingham Forest, we'll see Manchester United roll into town. Gitano, what happens here?
Forest. And like, not just because I'm anti-United. We talked about them kind of being bipolar this season, like where you get really good or really bad. I think that they might rise up to this occasion, playing United in the FA Cup, and I think you might see the best of Forest.
Fair enough. And I do hope that happens, but I'm going to have to go the other way just because my gut tells me. So I'm going to take Manchester United. But yeah, I would love to see a win at Forest, for Forest, see Manchester United bounce and just the misery continue. That'd be just tremendous. Chelsea welcome Leeds to Stamford Bridge. Gitano, who will advance?
If this had been at Ellen Road, I would have went with Leeds, but because it's at Stamford Bridge, I'm going to lean Chelsea.
Yeah, I have to go with you on that. Today or yesterday, I saw it today. I don't know if it happened today or yesterday, but Mauricio Pochettino gave a very, not emotional in the sense that he was crying or anything, but he was giving a press conference and he was saying, you cannot expect this team to do what cannot be done for what we are. And he was making his case it was a very heartfelt case, I must say that. I do believe that they'll beat Leeds, but I think, yeah, I don't know. Chelsea, if they're having a very strange season, but who knows? Maybe Mourinho will come in and pick it up after. Wolves and Brighton will look to captivate its audience, but who's going to the quarterfinal, Gaetano?
This is the one that's kind of stumped me the most because I can see it going both ways. And the way both teams have played this season, it really could go either way. I do just have a gut feeling that Wolves is going to squeak this one out.
Yeah, I've also taken Wolves, and at the beginning of the season it was interesting because they were losing games by very very narrow margins, and this in the Premier League, of course. And I thought to myself, well, they're not playing bad, they're playing okay, and by no means are they playing great now, but they're playing good football, and they've got an identity about them, and I think they're well safe from relegation. They're probably not going to challenge for anything in Europe, but I like the way that Wolves have been playing, and Brighton, I'm not sure what's happened there. They seem to have taken a bit of a dip, to your point earlier.
Yeah, they've kind of taken that step back. Last season they were challenging for Europe for almost until the last week of the season.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's one of those kind of the case with Newcastle where it's like the bar was set super super high with them that they were expected to challenge again. Like you said, like they haven't played bad, they just haven't played up to the level that we've seen them play. So yeah, I think Wolves might just squeak this one out.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Wolves as well. And finally, it is Liverpool and Southampton who will meet up for a clash at Anfield. G, what are you saying?
I don't want to say it, but I think it's going to be Liverpool. At Anfield after the Klopp announcement, like I think it's just inevitable at this point that they kind of go on a run in at least one of the cups. So yeah, I think they're going to comfortably beat Southampton here.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'm also taking Liverpool. Not European, excuse me. It's a cup game or a cup competition, I should say, excuse me, to move on in the competition. At Liverpool at Anfield, tough place. I think it's going to be Liverpool to go through, especially with all the Klopp stuff going on. They got to try and win something for them. And I do believe that they'll probably win the Carabao Cup, which we'll talk about next episode. But I think that'll be Liverpool as well. A reminder to our listeners that the fifth round of the FA Cup will commence on Monday, February 26th, and it will conclude on Wednesday, February 28th. All 8 games will kick off at either 2:45 p.m. or 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and all games can be watched on your local television sports network. Gitano, we really only have 2 disagreements here. We both think that Maidstone are going to get it done. You think it's going to be Bournemouth. I think it's going to be Leicester. We're both taking Newcastle. We're both taking your Manchester City. You're going to take Forest. I'm going to take United. We both think Chelsea. We both think Wolves. We both think Liverpool. So we'll be able to update our listeners, not next episode, but the episode after, as to how all of this went down. This is Daniel Scarpino and Gitano Gallo, and you are listening to Full Time on the Game Sports Podcast. A reminder that Full Time is sponsored by Little Caesars Pizza. You can download and access the Pizza Portal app for any of the 2 locations in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Have a delicious hot and ready pizza from Little Caesars today. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Full Time. As we wrap up today's show, we want to thank you all for being with us. Your support is unwavering. G, my brother, well done this evening.
Matt, like a phenomenal episode. I love talking about the transfers. I'm so excited for the cup competitions coming up. I got to rep my World Champions badge for the first time, so I'm pretty pumped about that. It was a pleasure, Scarps. Thank you.
Always is, and I'm glad that you got to rep that, and deservedly so. A reminder to our listeners that the next episode of Full Time will be recorded the week of February 19th, 2024. In that show, we will preview the Carabao Cup final. We will discuss Europe's Big Five, and we will take a look at the first leg of games in the Champions League round of 16. So excited for that. As always, we will keep everyone in the loop with all of the happenings in the world of football. For weekly content, make sure to hit like, follow, and subscribe to all platforms of both the Game Sports Podcast and 91N. on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Podbean. For Gitano Gallo, my name is Daniel Scarpino, and thank you for tuning in to Full Time. We look forward to seeing you at kickoff next time back here on the Game Sports Podcast and 91N. Best always.